Ubisoft has been getting absolutely wrecked over Assassin's Creed Shadows. They got caught working with Thomas Lockley, a fake Yasuke historian who has no right to be working on a project because half the information in his book is completely made up like a fan fiction. We know that they had put a Japanese reenactment group's banners into the game without researching them, and they had to apologize after being threatened with a lawsuit. And now we're finding out that the rumor circulating that Assassin's Creed Shadows would have same sex romance is confirmed, and the media is praising this decision. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, we half expected this, right? Because there was a rumor circulating that there was going to be same sex romances in this, meaning someone like Yasuke could same sex romance a different character. And that sounded ridiculous, right? Because this is the first time they're actually making a historical figure playable within their game. So you really expected them to try to follow that as closely as possible. And there is absolutely zero evidence that Yasuke was interested in men. It just doesn't exist. But of course, this has turned into some giant disrespectful fan fiction. And now we're finding out that this is actually confirmed. And it's going to be more developed than past games. This is a The Gamer article, which, by the way, The Gamer has really been shilling hard for this game, and they've actually put out 2 articles also saying Assassin's Creed Shadows was also going to be queer. But it says in a new interview with a YouTuber, Jor Raptor, Assassin's Creed Shadows associate narrative director Brooke Davies reveals that the game will have more developed relationships than past entries, while also bringing back same-sex romances. What's especially interesting about this revelation is that Shadows is revamping the dual protagonist system. In Odyssey and Valhalla, you essentially played the same character but were able to pick their gender at the start, but in contrast, Yasuke and Noe are completely separate and both are important to the story, so it seems like you're going to have 2 different romances going on at the same time, which sounds like it's going to be a clusterfuck. Now, of course, I have always said the more the better. I think it is great that you are providing gamers with options. I want there to be as many options within games as possible, which is why I personally do not mind having, big, expansive romance systems, as long as characters who you haven't flirted with are constantly not flirting with you. I hate when games have romances with basically every NPC, but then the NPCs constantly try to hate on your character. It's weird, it's distracting, but as long as you have to kind of initiate it, I think it's perfectly fine to have all different sorts of romance options in games. But the issue here is, again, we are talking about a playable historical figure. We are not talking about Yasuke, who is loosely based on the real Yasuke. We are talking about the individual that they wanted to put in this game being a historical figure. If he had a different name, but he was just loosely based on him, that would be one thing, but that's not what they're doing here, which is a major freaking problem. It says the old way meant same-sex relationships happened because of the gender you chose, not because they were written that way, whereas Yasuke and Noe have unique romances individual to their characters, meaning that these stories are intentionally queer. Now, maybe this is news to the gamer, but that's what DEI is all about, is intentionally forcing narratives and certain ideologies into content. That's why so many people are against games like Assassin's Creed Shadows, because we can tell that they are going above and beyond when it comes to DEI. And it's a shame because people have been asking for such a long time now for an Assassin's Creed game set in Japan, and now this is what we get. We are not getting the experience that most people expected. It would have been better if they just had Yasuke as a protagonist within the game itself, but you can't play as him and he's like a companion, right? That would have been even slightly better. And then they kind of fan fictioned away. But now they have just these options within the game that, is, of course, is not going to sit well with people. And I do think that when they mention in this next part about how it's going to feature things like platonic relationships, I think that's fine. I think that's good. But again, this whole entire game is basically one cringeworthy, historically inaccurate fan fiction. I do think that Ubisoft is going to be facing some major problems with this title. I don't think it's going to sell the way that they expected. And we also have Tessa, another massive SJW at the Gamer, saying Assassin's Creed Shadows was always going to be queer. These articles were posted basically back to back, so clearly they're trying to defend this decision as much as possible. But as we've seen time and time again, the fabled modern audience that these companies want their games to appeal to do not show up to buy games, and they probably simply don't really exist. Look at something like Flintlock, The Siege of Dawn, right? It just had its release weekend. It's got a measly 500 people playing it. That is not okay. But of course, they wanted this to appeal to modern audiences, and I guess the 500 people that actually bought it are part of that group. But this article says Ubisoft has revealed that their newest installment will once again include same-sex romances and have more developed relationships. So they're trying to play this off as it's okay because they've done this in the past, right? It's a feature that's going to return, but this is the first time in franchise history there has been a playable historical figure, and that means, in my opinion, that they should have been extremely careful with the decisions they made. If they had decided to let Noe have same-sex romances, it wouldn't really matter because she's not based on anyone specific, but they basically are just doing whatever the hell they feel like with this game, and that's why they're facing so much backlash at this point. It also says that the game seems to be going further with this than Ubisoft ever has before. One could say that in the previous games, romanceable characters were player sexual, and the relationships you had with them weren't always intentionally queer relationships crafted for that specific purpose, since the dual protagonists weren't separate people but gender options. Since Noe and Yasuke will have romances unique to their individual designed characters, the queer representation feels more intentional. They're just coming up with crazy terms at this point, like player sexual. I'm sorry, this is absolutely absurd in my opinion. Just the way that the Gamer is trying to spin this as something positive. Now, of course, these are just activists who want companies to bend the knee to their demands and put all this ridiculous content into their games. But at the end of the day, this isn't going to make people want to show up and swipe their credit card for this title. This is not what people care about. People are fine with there being romances within the game, but people want to see gameplay. We want to see features within the title. We want to see the map and the map system. We want to see the combat difficulties and how they scale. Like, we want to see the actual content, and it seems that Ubisoft is not really giving that to us. We've only seen a handful of teasers and trailers, and it's like they're trying to hold off because they know there's so much backlash surrounding this title, and it's like they thought it was all magically going to go away leading up to release if they kind of stayed quiet, but that is not happening, and people are not going to forget about all of these awful decisions they've made, like working with someone like Thomas Lockley, apparently, as he likes to call himself, a Yasuke historian, which is complete and utter absurdity, judging by the fact that half the content he put in his books were completely made up so that he could try to sell them to these modern audiences. But I don't think that this backlash is going to die down anytime soon, and people are not going to forget about some of these really crazy decisions they made with Assassin's Creed Shadows. So of course, I will be keeping my eye on the situation if there's any updates, but for now, that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.